Every year during Lent, confessionals flood with people looking to turn their hearts from sin and return to God. It's a fantastic sight to see. Really, it's why the season is such an inspiring one for me. Some see it as a season of suffering, as a dour, pessimistic time, but really it's quite hopeful. I mean, come on, what could be better than people taking their lives as Christians seriously, removing sin and replacing it with prayer, fasting, and almsgiving? It's kind of the gospel at work, and maybe that inspires you too. Maybe because it's the season of conversion, you feel compelled to go to confession, but you don't really know where to start. Maybe you haven't been in a while, or maybe you go often but are looking for a way to make it a bit more meaningful. Most people will tell you that the most important factor in making a good confession has nothing to do with the sacrament or the rite itself, but everything to do with how you prepare. You can't just walk into the confessional and hope to be ready for a serious conversion. It requires taking some time in prayer, examining your conscience for what actually needs to change. Now, lucky for you, many churches and organizations begin distributing examination tools around this time. Basically, questionnaires to help uncover what we might be blind to. Did you harbor anger against someone? Did you intentionally waste time at work and get paid to do personal things? Did you reference God in unbecoming ways in your speech? As a general concept, they're excellent. They dig beyond the surface, beyond what is readily available in the front of our consciousness, and ask us to really examine our lives. What might we be overlooking? What might we have forgotten, slipped into our lives that needs to be consciously removed? As a general concept, they're indispensable. Of course, it wouldn't be a video on this channel if there wasn't a but, a minor critique of something we've grown comfortable with, a slight nuance to the broad stroke. And so you shouldn't be surprised when I say that examinations of conscience are excellent tools as a general concept, but are often problematic in the way that they are constructed and implemented. You see, the vast majority of such tools are based on the 10 Commandments, and on the surface, this certainly makes sense. There's obviously nothing wrong with this. The 10 Commandments are the foundation for the moral law of the Bible and still apply to us today. The Catechism of the Catholic Church uses it as the outline for its section on moral life. Clearly, it's not a bad thing to examine one's life next to the 10 Commandments. The problem with it, and why I never recommend it to my directees, is that it leaves out a lot of really important aspects of our lives as Christians. For one, there are clearly more than 10 ways to sin. If you've just murdered someone or have worshipped a false idol, you're going to be covered by this method. But what about gossip? What about missing Mass on Sunday? Neither of these things are explicitly mentioned in the 10 Commandments. Some tools try to mitigate this problem by employing a fairly wide interpretation of each commandment, and that sort of works. The commandment says that you shouldn't bear false witness, but it seems appropriate to ask, in that regard, how we might have gossiped what was in fact true, but immensely uncharitable about another. We're supposed to keep holy the Sabbath, which one could now understand as going to Mass on Sunday, even though Sunday isn't the Sabbath. And that's great. I have no problem widening the scope a bit. It's not a great way to read the Bible in itself, but it can be helpful for such a tool. But it doesn't solve the problem. The fact of the matter is that there are moral imperatives of our faith that do not come from or easily fit into the 10 Commandments. Take, for instance, neglecting to feed the poor. Even the most generous of interpretations could hardly fit this into any of the 10, and so if all you're using to examine your conscience was the 10 Commandments, you would unwittingly skip over one of the most important demands of Jesus. The same can be said about polluting the environment, tying heavy burdens to the poor, using our statuses to manipulate others, or simply living with a sense of arrogance in the face of the church or God. Each of these sins defy alignment with one of the commandments, and yet we undoubtedly know that they are wrong. They break God's instruction to care for the earth, Jesus' condemnation of the Pharisees, his rebuke of the disciples, and just the way he lived himself. And I think it's because of this reason that I find so many of the confessions I hear to be limited in focus. Sincere and contrite, absolutely, yes, but not necessarily thoroughly examined. Now, I've only been at this for 8 months, so I'm by no means an expert on this, but I've heard hundreds of confessions at this point, and have yet to hear someone confess gluttony, yet to hear someone troubled by having too much money, yet to hear someone struggling with racist, sexist, or homophobic tendencies. Not once. Maybe it hasn't been enough time. Maybe I'm just hearing the confessions of living saints. I don't know. It's certainly possible. But what I think is far more likely is that the majority of people, myself included, do not use a comprehensive enough tool for examining their consciences. If all we ever ask are questions related to the Ten Commandments, there will be things that never come up. This, to me, is a problem. I know that I've struggled with each and every one of them at one time or another, often unknowingly. I know that our society is being torn apart by them and needs to have the light shined on its darkness. And so I have to ask, how do we awaken ourselves? How do we examine our consciences in a way that gets to the heart of everything God wants from us? The answer, quite simply, is that we need to diversify our tools. There isn't one official examination of conscience, but many wonderful tools to use. Maybe instead of turning to the book of Exodus, we turn to the books of Matthew and Luke and read the Beatitude. There we'll find a list of things that seem pretty important to Jesus. What if we sat in prayer, comparing our lives to what Jesus called blessed? That might shake us up a bit. Or what about the corporal works of mercy? Based on Jesus' criteria for entering the kingdom of heaven in Matthew, the church exhorts all Christians, especially during Lent, to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, shelter the homeless, visit the sick, visit prisoners, bury the dead, and give alms to the poor. These are Jesus' words. One would think that we should take them seriously. As a society, I always recommend reflecting on the 7 tenets of Catholic social teaching. The teaching authority of the Church has made it clear for centuries that our faith life must express itself in our political life. And so ask yourself, how well have I upheld the life and dignity of the human person? Committed myself to family, community, and active participation? Taken seriously my rights and responsibilities in the world? Lived with a preferential option for the poor? Defended the rights of workers, lived in solidarity with others, and cared for God's creation? How could any of these questions, any of these 3 models, fit within the structure of the 10 Commandments? They couldn't. And yet, we can clearly see that answering these questions correctly is fundamental to authentic Christian life. To skip over them is to leave a part of our lives unexamined. The problem I have with the common examination of conscience is not that it's bad. It's that it's incomplete. It focuses on a part of our moral life while leaving out so many others. And really, that's the nature of every tool I've mentioned. They all offer something critically important to our lives, something worth examining, but they are also blind to something else. If we want to truly examine our consciences, to make this season a true moment of conversion for us, we need to be open to asking it all. If you're looking to make a change in your life, looking to truly dig deep and root out the source of sin in us, I encourage you to try a few of these different models. The USCCB has 6 different tools that you can use, and there are obviously so many others to try. You may not find any of them perfect, but maybe there's a question that really sparks something in you. Because really, what have you got to lose? I say keep St. Paul's words close to heart when examining your conscience. Test everything, keep what is good. If you ask the question and nothing comes of it, great. But if you ask something you've never examined before and find some sin, you'll be all the better for it.